I unearthed the cursed boots of the deep web. Now they haunt my every waking moment. I never should have opened that door. The moment I twisted the handle, a cold draft slammed into me, chilling my bones. I hesitated, heart pounding, pulse racing. Nothing good ever waited behind doors like that. My usual routine had been predictable. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. But that night? It shifted into something sinister. The basement was dank, dark, smelling of mildew and regret. Shadows hugged the corners, swirling like they were alive. I stepped inside, a whisper of the unknown curling around me. My breath caught. I could feel an unsettling presence, a heaviness that pressed against my chest. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting. Beneath a pile of old boxes and cobwebs, I spotted the boots. Mottled leather, stained and weathered, as if they belonged to a long-forgotten soul. I reached out, fingers trembling, and felt a jolt, a static shock that rippled up my arm. I was entranced. It felt wrong, yet he was drawn in. Then, the noises began. A scraping sound, faint at first, like nails on a chalkboard. I froze. My heart clenched. It was there, just behind me. A whisper broke the silence, soft yet cruel. "Leave now." I spun around, but the room was empty. The hairs on my neck stood tall. Fear pulsed through me. Was I losing my mind? Curiosity battled with dread. I couldn't look away from those cursed boots. They pulled at me, promising secrets, adventurers from a different time. But the things they had seen, the horrors they had walked through, what price would I pay? The walls seemed to close in. I stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. It clattered to the floor, and the sound echoed ominously, a stark reminder of my solitude. Then silence. The heavy quiet was suffocating, drenched in anxiety. I could hardly breathe. Was it my imagination, or was the darkness shifting? I turned, and that's when I saw it. A fleeting shadow, just beyond my vision. My heart raced faster. I wasn't alone. I could feel its emptiness, the cold gaze of something dreadful. My hands trembled as I reached for the boots again. I needed answers. I had to understand what I had unleashed. But the instant my fingers brushed against them, the whispered warning crescendoed, morphing into a terrified scream that echoed through my mind. Just then, a loud bang rattled the house, a door slamming shut somewhere above. I jumped, panic surging through me. I ran towards the stairs, but as I turned, the boots shifted. They seemed to breathe, like they wanted me back. And then everything blacked out. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The darkness enveloped me like a shroud. I couldn't tell how long I was out, but when I came to, a pale, sickly light filtered through the basement's only window, illuminating the dust that had settled like a thick blanket over the room. My heart hammered in my chest, every thud echoing in the oppressive silence. Memory of the boots lingered, their presence still heavy in the part of my mind that clung to something unseen, something that didn't belong. Knees trembling, I pushed myself up from the cold floor, feeling disoriented. I could hardly shake the lingering whispers that echoed in my ears, pleading for release, crying out for attention. Fear gripped me as I looked around, searching for signs of life or anything to reassure me. Each shadow seemed to pulse with a life of its own, and I could swear I heard faint rustling from the curtains, as if they were being tugged by invisible fingers. With a surge of determination, I wobbled to my feet, my eyes darting to the boots that lay on their side. They twinkled faintly in the dim light as if beckoning me back into their twisted world. Something about them felt wrong, as if they were a threshold into another realm. I hesitated, the weight of my decision weighing heavily on my chest. Yet, I knew I had to understand what evil had chosen me. I stepped forward, heart racing, drawn in again by their chaotic allure. My fingers grazed the leather, coarse and pliable beneath my touch. The moment I was in contact with the boots, a vision burst forth, flashes of a graveyard, a storm tearing through dark skies, and blood. So much blood. I staggered back, gripping my head as piercing screams filled my mind, drowning out my senses. The world swirled away into an abyss of terror, and then I was back, the basement around me pulling into focus once more. The boots trembled slightly as if resonating with my fear, sharing a pulse that thrummed against my skin. Suddenly, the whispers turned to laughter, a cacophony of joyous shrieks that echoed off the damp walls, cold fingers tickling my spine, causing me to shiver involuntarily. I stumbled backward again, hitting a shelf, sending a collection of glass jars crashing to the ground, their contents spilling across the floor, a rainbow of forgotten ashes. The basement door creaked open slowly, then slammed shut, rattling the very foundations of my sanity. I was trapped. My pulse quickened as my breath came out in shallow gasps. Where was everyone? Why was I alone? Panic surged, but it was quickly replaced by a bone-chilling realization: I wasn't alone. A fleeting shadow skittered across my vision, drawing my gaze to the corner of the room. There it was, a figure, more felt than seen, cloaked in darkness yet radiating that unmistakable aura of dread. It stood just beyond reach, flickering like a dying flame. I wanted to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. Instead, I grew paralyzed by the knowing dread that coursed through me, wrapping me in a suffocating embrace. Then the laughter returned, now rising to a chorus, sinister and jubilant, filling the once quiet basement with an intoxicating air of madness. It urged me forward, pulling my feet, but a part of me resisted. I felt the space around me warp, reality bending and twisting, making everything seem surreal, unreal. And then, with a violent shattering of the quiet, the figure lunged forward, its hand reaching for me, its elongated fingers clawing toward my face. A cursed boot seemed to pulse in response, thrumming as if it, too, wanted release. Darkness swept over me again, but this time, a jagged scream erupted from my throat, drowning in a torrent of laughter that cascaded from the figure. The basement reverberated with eerie jubilation as the shadows coalesced, whispering promises of secrets untold and horrors unimagined. And just as everything blurred into nothingness, the echo of a voice, deep and malevolent, crept into my mind. "You cannot escape. You will wear the boots forever." The air in the basement grew thicker, suffocating me as I gasped for breath, each inhale a struggle against the palpable dread that dared to seep into my very soul. The cacophony of laughter faded into an expectant hush, leaving behind a disconcerting silence that made my blood run cold. I could still feel the phantom presence looming, a weight upon my chest as if the figure was standing directly behind me, waiting. Shakily, I turned to face the corner where the darkness seemed to gather, a whirl of shadows gathering like a storm cloud full of malice. My heart raced as I searched for anything solid to ground me amidst the unfolding nightmare. But there was only that stranglehold of despair, leading me back to the boots gleaming with accursed allure. They seemed to pulse softly, echoing the rhythm of my beating heart, a call I couldn't ignore. As my feet carried me closer, clammy hands grasping at my sanity, I could feel the laughter sneering at my weakness. They wanted me to listen, to understand what I had stumbled upon within the cursed depths of this wretched basement. I treated the boots as a grave offering, a harrowing embodiment of the trap into which I had unwittingly stepped. I needed to know why it haunted me, what pull it had over my very being. In a daze, I picked one boot up, tracing my fingers along its cracked surface, feeling something shift inside me. The warmth from my touch sent a jolt through the air. It hummed back like the sound of a distant heartbeat. The moment felt electric and intertwining of fate and malevolence. With every second, it beckoned deeper, begging me to identify the threads binding me to this cursed artifact. The hairs on my arms bristled as a cold gust rippled through the basement, stealing the warmth from the air and leaving only bitter dread behind. My eyes widened when I caught the slightest flicker of movement beside me. Out of the corner of my eye, a shadow elongated beside my half-turned figure, echoing the shape of something unmistakably human yet grotesquely distorted. There was no body to accompany it, just a writhing mass that twisted in the flickering pale light. The shadows danced playfully along the walls, telling stories only they could understand, and my mind reeled as I tried to process what I saw. It was grotesque, an abomination tethered to the dark. It jerked in fits and starts, dragging itself closer, and its form began to coalesce before mere reflection or a mockery of humanity, draped in a tattered cloak soaked in despair. I see you, it rasped in a voice like an unending whisper, chilling yet oddly inviting. You seek the truth of the booths, not wisdom, but your own downfall. It took a step closer, the air thickening with the stench of decay, and all I could do was stand frozen, my breath hitched in my throat, despair clawing at the edge of my mind. Suddenly, the laughter erupted once more, now a wild, feral sound that echoed like the cries of tormented spirits yearning for release. The figure lunged forward, the tattered cloak unfurling at a sickening pace, revealing empty sockets where eyes should rest, just black voids that consumed the light around it. My pulse quickened with terror. This abyssal gaze pierced right through me, seizing my very essence. Then the basement around me trembled, the walls vibrating as if responding to our confrontation. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, the very foundation of the world cracking under the weight of secrets best left buried. Shadows rolled forth like a tide, rushing around me, swallowing up my surroundings until I was encased in darkness. As I reached for the remaining boot, drawn against my better judgment by its vile, seductive pull, the very floor erupted into jagged crevasses, revealing an unfathomable drop into blackness. I grabbed onto the shelves, my fingers curling around splintered wood as I peered into the abyss. It called to me an echoing, mournful voice that claimed to know my deep desires and fears. "Join us," the figure cooed, its voice now a twisted lullaby. "You are one of us now." The greater the pull, the tighter the grip of despair on my heart. Would I succumb to the infernal whispers, or could I escape this wretched place, this web spun of anguish? But just as I prepared to let go of everything to grasp this cursed destiny, the shadow lunged, its maw wide and reaching, the darkness spilling forth as the room erupted with a deafening roar. I could only scream, tumbling into the darkness, and in that final moment, I felt the weight of 1,000 souls pressing against me, chanting in sinister unison, and then everything fell silent. I awoke amidst an oppressive silence, an eerie stillness vibrating around me, as if the world itself held its breath. My body felt heavy, weighted down by an unseen force. Every inch of skin prickled as if crawling with a swarm of unseen creatures. I blinked rapidly, attempting to clear the remnants of dreams that twisted like black vines through my mind. Where was I? The room enveloped me in darkness, an all-consuming void punctuated by the distant flickering of a single, struggling light bulb overhead. It swayed gently, casting erratic shadows that flickered against the dimly stained walls, distorting my perception further. I strained my ears, desperately searching for any indication of reality, any whisper of assurance that I was merely trapped in some forgotten part of my house. But I was met only with the ominous pulse of my own heartbeat. Rising from the floor, I attempted to piece together the jagged fragments of memory that intruded upon my mind. I thought I could hear sound-muffled voices echoing somewhere far beneath the surface of my consciousness, pleading and tormented. "Run," one voice seemed to croak, while another answered with a derisive chuckle, "It is too late." Stumbling forward, I noticed the walls were adorned with photographs, each one depicting unfamiliar faces twisted into grotesque expressions: terror, rage, despair. They stared back at me, eyes wide and hollow, their mouths moving in silent screams. My stomach lurched, nausea gripping me as I struggled to pull my gaze away. Yet, a magnetic force compelled me to linger to decipher their agony. In the corner of the dim room, amidst a pile of rotting debris, I saw it, the second boot, resting there like an unholy relic. I felt an almost magnetic pull toward it, an inexplicable urge to reach out and seize it, as if it were a key to my salvation or the abyss itself. Instinctively, I hesitated, the voice of reason shattering against the cacophony of whisperings drumming rhythmically in my skull. "Touch it," they urged. "Set free what has been trapped. Let it guide you." Shaking my head violently, I backed away, my foot catching on the edge of the floor as I tumbled back into the shadows. The darkness roared around me, closing in, cocooning me in chilling silence. I scrambled to my feet, heart racing as I forced myself toward the door, only to find it standing ajar. As I creaked it open, an icy draft swept through the hallway beyond, the temperature dropping as if a storm brewed just outside of sight. I stepped into the corridor, each footfall echoing with dread, the walls groaning under the pressure of unseen horrors. The air thickened with malice, tainting my lungs with its rancid stench. As I navigated deeper into the unknown, every instinct told me I needed to find a way out before whatever inhabited this space caught up with me. Yet as I stumbled down the hall, the atmosphere twisted, wrapping around me like a snake poised to strike. From somewhere, faint whispers began to weave through the darkness, fragments of anguished words slipping from the very walls, hinting at stories too twisted to comprehend. "Join us, release us, free our souls." Panic clawed at my throat as I pressed forward, my fingers skimming the rough texture of the wall, desperate for some form of solid reassurance. Then I spotted a glimmer of hope at the far end of the hall, a door with light seeping through its cracks. I lunged toward it, each passing second feeling like a desperate scream muting in a cacophony of chaos. But just as I reached for the handle, the echoes of despair surged, morphing into a chorus of laughter that vibrated through me, deep and unholy. The walls began to pulse, the photos writhing and twisting, mouths stretching wide enough to swallow reality whole. I turned back, realizing the corridor was no longer the one I had entered. It had shifted, warped, the path itself bending to the will of a darker force. The boot and its malevolent whispers pulled me backward, every instinct screaming against the current of dread that surged through my body. Before I could catch my breath, the sound intensified, a thunderous cacophony that seemed to encapsulate the entire building. My reflection worriedly peered back at me from the glassy surface of a nearby window, but it wasn't just me. A multitude of faces, disfigured and consumed by shadow, stared back, and in that moment, a piercing, inhuman wail erupted from the depths of the basement, a sound so haunting it stopped my heart. The floor heaved abruptly beneath my feet. With no warning, the ground gave way, splintering and collapsing like a lie unraveling before my eyes. I was falling into depths unknown, darkness swallowing me whole. And then, just when I thought the fall would end, hands reached from beyond the shadows, grasping at me, pulling me into a horrifying embrace. A scream choked in my throat as the last semblance of light extinguished around me. I plunged into the abyss, anticipating the unrelenting impact, but instead found myself suspended in a grotesque limbo. The hands grasping at me were insubstantial, their coldness creeping across my skin like a deathly fog. The darkness enveloped me tighter, constricting my lungs, suffocating my screams before they could take flight. Suddenly, I was drawn through an otherworldly portal, my senses overwhelmed by a cacophony of sensations and emotions, as if I had been ripped from the world I knew and thrust into a warped nightmare of twisting dimensions. Ghostly apparitions flickered in and out of focus, familiar yet unimaginable, each one etched with visceral agony. Amidst the chaos, I discerned slivers of whispered voices, sighing and choking, blending into a maelstrom of despair. "Help us," they cried, the sound like shards of glass piercing the fabric of my mind. You are one of us now. We are all trapped. Just as I began to adapt to the swirling tumult, a shattering light erupted, pulsing red, like a heartbeat turned malevolent. It illuminated figures creeping from the dark edges of this strange realm, grotesque silhouettes lumbering toward me with movement that blurred the lines between human and something far worse. I recoiled instinctively, yet I had nowhere to retreat. The oppressive darkness pressed in from all sides, narrowing my options until it felt like the very air wanted to suffocate me. The garbled laughter of long-dead souls echoed through this dreadful place, each note an invitation to join their cacophony of suffering. Then, piercing through the hysteria, a familiar sensation rushed over meth-haunting pull of the cursed boot. It throbbed with an insatiable hunger, drawing me closer to the shadowy figures who had locked their hollowed eyes upon me, their twisted mouths curling into sinister grins. "Did you think you could escape?" One rasped, the sound sizzling like lightning through the void. Its voice dripped with malice, and I realized it belonged to one of the faces from the photos that haunted the walls, contorted in eternal torment. "You have chosen to tread where few are allowed. You cannot turn back now." Desperation surged through me as I fought the magnetic pull of the boot, knowing it was the key to my existence, yet fearful of the force it commanded. With my mind racing, I clutched my head, trying to drown out their sweet seduction. "You're free with us," they cooed. "You'll learn what your reality truly means, beyond this feeble existence." Amid the chaos, a vision pierced through the haze, flashes of my mundane life, brightness and safety now feeling impossibly distant. I had lived passionately, naively thinking the horrors of the world only resided on the fringes, lurking under shadows, yet here I was, basking in the grotesque shadows I had only glimpsed on the surface. Suddenly, the ground beneath me trembled violently, the figures recoiling as rumbles reached a fever pitch. The very fabric of the dimension around me began to fracture, widening into an abyss that promised either salvation or doom. I felt the gravitational pull shift, unleashing a fear so primal it rendered me motionless, drawn to the edge of what could only be an infinite void lurking below. "Join us!" The figures shrieked, their forms distorting further, as the dimension trembled with the fury of unseen forces. "You are not alone, we are the lost. We will feast on your fears." I struggled against the tide of despair as I looked into the masked faces reaching out to me. In their hollow gaze, I saw countless souls, each vying for recognition, and in their eyes, something else, a flicker of hope, the glimmer of potential freedom. Before I could comprehend my next move, the ground beneath me gave way entirely. I plummeted through the rift, heavy but lightened by the realization that whatever lay below wasn't merely a void, but a shifting sea of countless eyes watching, waiting. As the world around me spun into a vortex of agony and laughter, I screamed as I reached their outstretched fingers, just a breath away from becoming one of the lost souls who beckoned me deeper into their eternal darkness. And then, something cold and slimy brushed against my leg, tightening its grip and dragging me into the darkness, where the tormented awaited, both reveling and dreading the moment I would join their ranks. In the last fleeting instant, I glimpsed the boot near the edge of the rift, a final flicker of temptation, but the shadows reached out, encompassing me entirely. I couldn't tell where I ended and they began, as I felt the final pieces of my humanity dissolve into the depths, swallowed by the unknown, and then silence. The silence was suffocating, a heavy shroud that clung to me, heavy as lead, unyielding and almost sentient in its pressure. I drifted in a void of inky black, the familiar chaos of thoughts replaced by a stark, unnerving stillness. I had tumbled from one nightmare into another, the air thick with the lingering whispers of those forgotten souls, their despair curling around me like a vine desperate for sustenance. Gradually, reality clawed its way back, and I felt a floor beneath me, a cold, slick surface, pulsating with a heartbeat that reverberated through my body. I pushed myself upright, my heart pounding in a rhythm that matched the beat of the world surrounding me. The very ground emitted an unsettling warmth that sent shivers coursing through my spine, raising prickles on my skin. Peering into the shadows that seeped around me, I became acutely aware of the grotesque formations flitting at the edge of my vision. The more I focused, the more they coalesced into twisted faces and misshapen bodies, each one bearing a mask of agony twisted into a grimace that seemed to mock the very essence of life. Their eyes deep wells of sorrow and dread, glimmered with a light that wasn't light at all. A low, keening sound reached my ears, a chorus of sorrow that resonated with every pulse of the ground. It was as if the shadows sang a lament for their lost existence. "You have awakened," a voice rumbled, deep and sickly sweet, echoing around me as if from the very depths of this forsaken place. "Welcome, new child of shadows." It took me a moment to realize the source of the voice. A massive figure loomed ahead, swathed in the darkest shadows that thickened the air like fog. Its form twisted and undulated, oscillating between something humanoid and something beyond comprehension, a true creature of the abyss. The faces of the tortured souls merged into its body, their cries intermingling with its own, a cacophony of dreadful unity. "Join us," it beckoned with a voice that was the collective whisper of all those lost. "You liberated us the moment you stepped into the realm of the cursed. Your presence brings renewal. Feel the echoes of your own heart as ours entwine." Frantically, I glanced around, realizing that I wasn't merely surrounded by despair, but was now an integral part of it, an unbreakable thread in this gloomy tapestry. My heart raced as the atmosphere grew thick, almost viscous, pulling me deeper into the web of shadows that seethed with intent. Memories of my life flashed before me, moments of laughter and warmth, tragically beautiful, yet now nothing more than distant echoes of a past I could no longer return to. "No!" I gasped, a feeble protest against the suffocating shadows that sought to claim me. "I refuse." But my defiance only drew the attention of more specters, their gaunt forms rising from the floor around me, melding into a thrumming mass of despairing souls. They called out to me, each voice distinct yet indistinguishable in their abject longing. "You belong here, don't you? We feel your fear. We sense your pain. Let us show you what it truly means to be free." The whirlwind of despair grew, their twisted forms pushing in on me, their pale, bony fingers outstretched, brushing against my skin like icy tendrils. I recoiled and staggered back, a sudden burst of fright propelling me towards the edge of what I could only discern as an endless swirling vortex of darkness, and glimmering eyes captivating me in their depths. The realization struck me like a bolt of lightning. These were not mere whispers of the wretched, these were fragments, pieces of those who had stood where I stood right now, teetering on the brink of eternal despair. If I surrendered to this, what would remain of me? Would I, too, become one with their tragic allure? Suddenly, the ground trembled in a violent convulsion that shook loose dust and particle remnants from the shadows. The haunting laughter returned, triumphant and horrifying, summoning an even greater darkness. I turned to run, but the elastic tendrils of shadow caught hold, pulling me with a serpentine strength toward the abyss, toward everything I dreaded yet inexplicably yearned to know. "Come closer. Embrace your fate." The mass of souls clamored, their elongated faces pleading and gnashing in excitement. "Feel the ecstasy of annihilation. Let us unite." As I neared the edge, the coercive pressure grew unbearable, and in one last desperate grasp, I reached back for the cursed boots still lingering in the corner of my fading perception. But in that instant, I felt a hand clammy and cold clutch my ankle. I glanced down, and was met by the hollow, sorrowful eyes of a child stretched beyond recognition, its lips curling into a devilish smile that pierced the remaining fragments of my sanity. In that moment, my fate hung suspended, a thread pulled taut over the chasm of endless sorrow, and I was left to wonder which would shatter first, the thread or my will to fight. And then, with a final wrenching scream, I was pulled into the void, surrounded by a chorus of writhing shadows, all clamoring to show me what awaited on the other side of fate I was only beginning to comprehend. The pull of the abyss was all-consuming, a malignant force that threatened to engulf my very essence. Shadows clawed at my skin, and the cacophony of anguished voices swirled around me like a tempest. The child's grip remained firm, an anchor pulling me deeper into the harrowing darkness. My instincts screamed for escape, for the light, yet every beat of my heart synchronized with the unsettling rhythm of despair that echoed back from the churning void. "Join us, you will be one with us." The child's voice echoed, a chorus of tortured innocence, mingling with the ethereal cries of those who had forsaken their humanity. "Leave behind your burdens. You cannot fight what you truly desire." I thrashed against the forces dragging me down, fighting to extricate myself from the clutches of that pitiful form. My foot struck the ground, sending tremors through the shadows, which hissed in fury at my rebellion. The child's form shimmered, flickering like a faulty light, revealing glimpses of horror behind the facade of face distorted in agony, eyes wide but void of hope. Each flicker unveiled a world wreathed in shadows, rot, and despair, as if the very air was poisoned by forlorn dreams. Just when I thought I would succumb, darkness erupted around me like a molten tempest, a vortex of stirring souls spilling forth, their elongated limbs reaching toward me with desperate fervor. The shadows twisted into grotesque shapes, taking the form of familiar figures, faceless relatives, lost friends, phantoms of my past materializing in the cacophony of my terror. They beckoned me, each distortion whispering promises of solace wrapped in allure, a temptation soaked in promises of surrender. "Stay with us. Your nightmares are ours to share," they pleaded, their voices dripping with acrimony and allure. Each phrase tugged at my heart, awakening a hunger for the very dark that sought to consume me. I could not allow them to take me, not like this, not into this abyss where despair reigned. Gritting my teeth, I surged forward, wrenching myself free. I dug my fingers into the slick edge of the chasm, the blackness threatening to swallow me whole. Yet in that moment of desperate resistance, the shadows responded. They pulsated, a malevolent heartbeat, and the ground beneath me rippled like a surface disturbed by unseen creatures. With a twisting sensation, I felt the relentless grip of fingers cold and trembling wrap around my wrists, pulling me back toward that accursed pit. I gasped, fighting against the tide of darkness that surged hungrily, like a beast awakened. I screamed, feeling the primal urgency to claw my way back into the world of the living. "You cannot have me." With renewed resolve, I pulled my ankles free, frantically clawing at the surface until, in a wrenching surge, I was flung back onto solid ground. Gasping for breath, I stumbled onto a desolate expanse within the void, the swirling shadows now a distant thrumming tide, their howls sinking lower, muted but never silenced. As I steadied myself, an insidious chill crept into my bones, as if the darkness behind me pulsed with indignation. Every instinct urged me to flee, but before I could take a single step, a vision flashed before me, a flicker of light that seemed at odds with the encroaching shadows. My heart clenched as I beheld the boots inconspicuous as they were malevolent, sitting eerily in the center of a glowing sigil etched upon the ground. The cursed boots, shimmering and inviting, glinted with an otherworldly glow amidst the decay of despair. A scream rose within me, urgent warning, but it morphed into something else, a seductive yearning that called to the very depths of my being. I felt the echoes of their past woven through the fabric of that cursed leather and fabric, seductive whispers woven into the fibers luring me closer. Heart racing, I fought against my own fascination, but could not tear my gaze away. Then, a guttural sound rumbled from behind me, a terrifying progenitor of dread that twisted my gut. A mass of shadows, bound together, crawling forward like a wave of grotesque possibilities. Faceless figures emerged from the dark, more twisted than the ones that had taunted me moments before, their forms pulsating and shifting in nightmarish synchronicity. I took a trembling step back, feeling the ground beneath me pulse with anticipation, my instincts shrieking at me to flee to save myself. But another dark impulse beckoned, compelling me to touch those boots, to understand the power they held. What would I unleash? What freedom or doom awaited if I surrendered to their grip? Fear and desire intertwined within me like a gnarled vine choking the will to resist. In that haunting moment, frozen between worlds, dread twisted its claws around my heart as the mass of shadows surged closer, hungry, insatiable, while the boots quietly gleamed, promising a fate no mortal was meant to embrace. And from the depths of the black, I heard a chorus of voices rising to a chilling crescendo, each one distinct yet cacophonous, proclaiming in unison, "Choose wisely whether to dread eternity, or to welcome its embrace as one of us." The choice lurked before me like a venomous flower, and I was left teetering on the brink, as the shadows shrouded closer, waiting to claim what I could not decide. The shadows encroached, their murky tendrils knocking against my resolve, weaving through the air with sinister purpose. The pulsating mass moved like a living insidious swelling tide of despair, festering but relentless. Each face twisted into grotesque mockeries of the lost and the broken, reflective of lost dreams and painful regrets. I felt my heart race, caught between the allure of the cursed boots and the suffocating dread of what the shadows would do if they caught me. The moment stretched like a taut wire above an abyss. The sickening whispers swirled tighter around me. "Join us, let go. Find solace and surrender," they urged, their voices dripping with false comfort. With every passing second, I could feel the grip of dread tighten around my throat, and the child's voice, the very voice that had lured me into this hell, echoed louder in my mind. "You long for release." Desperation clawed at me. If I stepped back, I would succumb to the darkness behind me. If I moved forward, the boots loomed ominously before me, intertwining their siren call with my panic. They glimmered like the eyes of the damned, inviting yet foreboding, exuding an aura of ancient evil that begged to be unleashed on a world unprepared for its depths. Gritting my teeth, I found my legs trembling as I took a cautious step closer, the sigil beneath the boots pulsing with a quiet malevolence. A whisper echoed in the edges of my consciousness, a promise of knowledge unbidden, power untamed, and an escape from the shadows that clawed at my mind. My fingers twitched at my side, torn between reaching for that accursed object or bolting into the inky void. But as the mass of shadows surged forward, a guttural yearning bloomed in my chest, entwining itself with my sanity. "Join us," they cried, and suddenly I saw a shroud of darkness unfurling around them, an intimacy shared among the lost. It empowered their forms with allure, seducing the brokenness within me with a truth that almost felt like loving warmth. They had surrendered, they were free. The very thought sent tremors of longing through me. A shadow darted forward, elongating its limbs, and I barely sidestepped in time, feeling the chill of despair sweep past me like a storm. Their fingers brushed against my skin, seeking connection, yearning to ignite the embers of my despair. The noise around me, while chilling, bore an undercurrent of temptation, the lure of solidarity among the forsaken. Then I glanced back at the boots, wondrously dark, a vessel of power that could either chain me to this moment or grant me dominion over the nightmares surrounding me. My heart pounded like a war drum, the duality of fear and desire threatening to overwhelm my senses. As if sensing my indecision, the shadows recoiled for a fleeting moment, then lunged with a vengeance, shifting into a serpentine mass, screeching with innumerable voices clamoring to devour me whole. I felt ice trail down my spine, and I stumbled backward, my mind racing. The sigil beneath the boots flared, illuminating the encroaching mass of darkness, revealing something grotesque, something resembling the beggar child, but grown tall and thin, its mouth agape in an unholy wail. "Choose!" it howled, a sound that tore through the air like shattering glass. The shadows erupted into a wild frenzy, and the child dissolved into 1,000 faces, each crying out with hunger. They reached for me, fingers ghostly and insatiable, stretching toward my flimsy barrier of resistance. In a surge of instinct, I dove for the boots. I felt my heart pulsing, and awareness blooming as my fingers grazed the cold leather. As I wrapped my hands around the pair, a rush of power coursed through me, intoxicating and dark. Visions flashed before my eyes me past, my fears, all blurring into a kaleidoscope of sorrow. I could feel their essence leaking into me, desperate to find a host for their torment. And then it happened. I was no longer standing in that shadow-riddled void. I felt my soul being yanked through a wormhole of torment, time dilating as I teetered on the precipice of terror. The wearing shadow was back at me, now standing only a mere breath away, its grotesque visage illuminated within the moment of my choice, eyes wide with hunger. "Welcome to the fold," it hissed, and in that instant, I realized I wasn't merely trapped between worlds. I was about to become part of something much darker, something that would twist the grasp of power into horror. As the abyss inhaled around me, drawing me into its eternally dark embrace, I felt myself unraveling within the turmoil of the damned, my mind tearing between the world I knew and the sinister chaos of what I had awakened. I was losing myself, but not to fear. Instead, I was drawn into a greater evil than I could ever have imagined. I opened my mouth to scream, yet all that escaped was laughter, cackling, insidious laughter that echoed in harmony with the shadows closing in. And then the world around me shattered like glass, leaving only darkness behind. The boots twisted, their leather now oozing something darker still, and in the distance, I heard the sonorous building of a chant, rising above the wails and desires of the shadows, sinister and unmistakable. "Welcome to the new beginning." The air shifted, thickening with an insidious presence that seemed to seep from the very ground beneath me. Tendrils of shadow writhed like smoke around my body, embracing me, as if claiming me as their own. The voice of the entity, the beggar child, now a monstrous specter, echoed in the recesses of my mind. "You are one of us now. Embrace your power. It will set you free." I shuddered at the implication, yet beneath the layers of fear, a flicker of intrigue ignited within me. There was a pulsing energy pulling at my feet, compressing my thoughts into a singularity of dark desire. The boots guided my every step as I stood, their weight grounding me even in the enveloping chaos. I could hear the whispers of the damned growing sharper, more coherent. "Unleash us, use us," they urged, tantalizingly close, inviting me to succumb to the promise of despair mingled with intoxication. And yet, what was I truly welcoming? The child's laughter echoed in my ears, warm and sinister, a reminder of what lay beyond the veil, beckoning me to leap. I was torn. The hunger for power surged through my veins, while the remnant of my humanity clung desperately to the hope of escape. It was maddening, a twisted dance between hunter and hunted, light and shadow. The shadows shifted violently, deepening into nightmarish shapes clothed in agony. A figure ascended amongst them, towering and grotesque, swathed in a cloak of despair. "You must prove yourself," it boomed, a voice like thunder that rattled the very core of my being. "In this new beginning, we need a vessel, one who can withstand the void." In that moment, the realm shifted beneath me, and I was pulled into a vision that set icy fingers grazing my thoughts. I saw echoes of the past, people I had known, friends, family, each entangled in darkness, their faces twisted into visages of sorrow and pain. I saw their despair, their helplessness, and it crushed me. Would they suffer because of my choice? I had awakened the boots. I had invited this horror into my life. The figure loomed closer, its face now formed of the lost souls I'd glimpsed. "Find one who embodies despair. Stand upon their grave, and we shall forgive your transgressions," it commanded, the massive shadows stretching out like serpents ready to devour, slithering closer, ready to drag me into their depths. "Choose wisely," urged the growling chorus of faces, a cacophony of cries ringing in my ears. My heart pounded, a metronome of dread, as the shadows everywhere seemed to pulse in rhythm with its beat. I no longer felt like the one controlling my fate. With the boots on, I stepped deeper into the void, feeling the atmosphere shift like a living organism in response to my intentions. My skin prickled as forgotten memories flickered to the surface, faces from my childhood, old grievances resurrecting themselves in grotesque forms. "It should have been you," they seemed to whisper through the haze, their voices contorting in a painful symphony. "You are the key, and this time you can save them. Show me!" I screamed, desperation pouring from my throat, mixing with a latent power that hummed through the cursed leather. The shadow shrank back momentarily, revealing a fissure filled with a kaleidoscope of colors. As my will solidified, the split widened, and before me emerged a graveyard, ragged and shadowed, each stone etched with tales of woe, the perfect battleground against which to unleash the cursed potential swirling within me. I stumbled through the interlaced shadows toward a cracked headstone bathed in haunting moonlight, its inscription familiar yet foreign. "Here lies the one who cried," it read, and suddenly the air thickened. Breath came in hitches, a wordless agony echoing off the stone. I fell to my knees, my mind racing. Was this a way to elevate my power? Or had I unleashed a force beyond my comprehension? I grasped the sigil on the boots, heat radiating from them as shadows swirled tighter, their whispers clawing at my sanity. Yet as I closed my eyes, the familiar voice of the beggar child lingered, a single thread of recognition hidden within the chaos. "We are bound now. You will come to understand this darkness, and when you do, we shall consume them all." Before I could respond, the ground under the headstone trembled violently, scattering dirt and decay as a shape began to rise, a spectral figure emerging, eyes two voids that threatened to pull me into their depths. Panic surged within me, yet the chains of the boots pulled tighter, entwining me in their dark promise. And just like that, the spectral figure spoke, a voice as chilling as ice. "You are the harbinger of despair, and you will never return." The earth cracked open beneath me, and in an instant I plummeted into a swirling abyss, the echoes of the lost growing louder, mocking my desperation, promising terrors I had yet to understand. Shadows beckoned, their embrace both terrifying and warm, a promise mingled with impending doom. "I would rather embrace my fate than let you go," I heard myself confess, the echoing laughter of the shadows wrapping around me like a shroud, whispering, taunting with every heartbeat, dragging me closer to the darkness that had become my singular reality. And then the abyss swallowed my scream, "Welcome to the fold." I stood frozen, the world around me a wilderness of shadows and whispers, the very air thick with the remnants of the lost. The figures coiled around me, their hollow eyes glistening with something akin to hope, waiting for the inevitable. As I beheld the spectral entity rising from the grave, I felt the oppressive weight of its despair wash over me. The shadows howled, pressuring me into an unholy bond, a pact formed in the underbelly of anguish. With a gasp, I recalled something, a spark of lost joy resembling a fleeting childhood memory, a time when I had believed the world was brimming with possibility instead of dread. But that innocence was a ghost, suffocated by what I had stumbled upon. And yet, here I was, standing at the precipice of power, ready to embrace the dark heart of the abyss. The specter's gaze pierced me, a gateway to the void that threatened to swallow my very soul. "You will join us," it intoned, a voice that entwined sorrow with authority. "You are meant to lead us." Led? Horror bled through my veins, each heartbeat echoing with the weight of anguish that enveloped me. "I'm just Anno," it interrupted, its breath a chilling gale. "You are so much more. You think you were simply drawn here by the curse of the boots? You were chosen." Reality twisted around me as confirmation pulsated through my body. A flood of memories surged to new dark secrets, cries muffled by layers of denial. I had been part of them all along. Each heartache, every scar born from loss, whispered to me, feeding the horror within me. I had sought understanding, but all I found was despair. The shadows surged forward, becoming a tide that lapped at my consciousness. Faces emerged, each one belonging to a story I'd felt, but had chosen to ignore. Friends, family, and those I'd lost along the way. Their voices intertwined, a dissonant symphony that rose, to a deafening crescendo. You are our vessel. You must take what is mine. They pleaded, weaving their essence into me, urging me to seize the power dwelling at my feet. Stop! I screamed suddenly, clutching my head, terror flooding my system. I won't be another puppet, but you already are. The child's face materialized from the shadows, grotesque and charming, its smile an unsettling reflection of innocence long forgotten. You invited this darkness just by seeking it. I staggered back, each word striking deeper than the last, and yet he couldn't leave. The boots at my feet pulsed in rhythm with my heart, their existences bound to mine in ways I couldn't begin to understand. I could feel their call echoing off every wall of grief and regret that I had built around myself for so long. And oh, I choked, refusing to succumb fully to the horror that cocooned me. I won't be a vessel for your torment. Then embrace your true nature, it breathed, tightening its grip on my soul, pulling me deeper into the shadows. Dare to unearth your savagery, discover what you are capable of. I realized then that these shadows were not just wraiths of despair, but echoes of my unresolved sins. My failures, losses, and the darkness I had turned my back on surged forth, entwining my will with theirs, unearthing a truth that throbbed within the blackened depths of my heart. And as I grappled with the revelation, a twist of exhilaration mingled with dread ignited within me. I was more than a victim of my choices. Fine, I spat, the final exhale of apprehension slipping through my lips. I will not succumb. I will conquer. As the words left my mouth, the shadows recoiled, roaring in surprise and hunger. The boots responded, flaring with energy, a cascade of brilliant light cutting through the darkness momentarily, illuminating the countless faces that surrounded me, each one shimmering with recognition of my newfound resolve. Yes! Yes! They cried, their voices echoing in triumph and dread. Become who you are meant to be. In an instant, the world around me shifted, unraveling into a swirling maelstrom that twisted unrelentingly, pulling me into a vortex of formless shapes and voices clamoring for dominion. But there was no fear left within me. Every ounce of despair was transformed into raw dark energy that propelled me forward. I opened my arms, welcoming the chaotic embrace of shadows as I allowed everything to entwine and consume me. And then the truth. The shadows pulsed with life, and I felt every lost soul merge with mine, thick like syrup, but empowered by rage and sorrow. I was liberated in a way that transcended comprehension. No longer a captive, I had become a sovereign over this hell, the threads of fate intertwining into something potent and incredible. But as I embraced my role, an unsettling realization gripped me. The faces of the lost didn't only look upon me with yearning. There was a primal recognition, a sinister understanding of a new darkness born from my own. My heart raced, terror lapping at my consciousness anew as laughter echoed around me, a symphonic cacophony of glee and impending doom. I had outwitted the imminent fate that clawed at me, but in stepping into this insidious power, I had awakened something far more monstrous within me. As I took a step into this haunting abyss, ready to reclaim my dominion over despair, I could hear the hushed echoes of the damned weaving through the shadows like a dark tapestry, and somewhere, off in the distance, the echo of my own laugh whispered back a chilling reminder that not only had I become their harbinger, but that the cursed boots I had unearthed were now eternally bound to me. Welcome to the new beginning, they whispered as darkness cloaked me, leaving only one truth palpable amid the chaos. I had become the monster of the legend, forever destined to haunt the shadows I had once feared, forever wearing the boots of despair.